Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. How did you get into writing?
I didn't start with writing plays. I started with writing songs. I've been a songwriter for, I guess, 50 years, thereabouts.
Wow! What kind of songs?
It's not country. It's not folk.
Not blues?
Not blues. I guess you call it Americana. I write about what I know.
Sure.
I don't write to assignment very well, and that goes for everything I write. It's a process that just happens, it feels like. Maybe something will sit there for months and months, and then suddenly a song comes out all at one time.
So when did you start writing songs?
I think it was in the 8th grade.
Okay.
First song in the 8th grade.
This is not to impress girls or anything like that?
Well, I don't think so. We did have a band.
Sure.
Everyone had a garage band.
Yes.
And my friend Billy Armstrong and I still have a copy of the song. I have no idea what the melody was.
Right.
But I have a handwritten copy of that song, which I'm very happy to still have. It started in 8th grade. I think that's 7th or 8th grade for sure. Right. So.
And you had a band like a lot of us did when we were in
junior
high school. Yeah, that's several bands. But obviously this must have carried on through time.
It did. I took some time off. I got away from it for a while, but I always knew that it was still there. A few years ago, now maybe nearly 20 years ago, I ran into new friends that had the same musical ideas that I did. Right. And it sparked that interest again, and we started playing music together and writing songs together, and it's been a new journey for the past 20 years, I guess. Wow.
What would you tell young songwriters?
Write about what you know. Don't try to write things that people tell you to write. It's a famous thing in the songwriting world. People, they know you're a songwriter, right? And in conversations, it constantly happens. Oh, wouldn't that make a great song? And our response usually is, "Well, hey, you should write that."
Right, you should write that.
Yeah, you should write that because that's your passion, right. And I think that's what you should write about. It comes across when you finish that song, and especially if you're going to perform it yourself. I'm a little bit in awe of performers. I'm working with a young lady right now who's recording a full CD of my songs, and that she can take those songs and perform them as her own. I'm not real good at that. It needs to be mine.
Yes.
I don't play many cover songs when I play out.
But you can play your stuff.
I play my things, but I'm not passionate about those cover songs. I have 2 or 3 cover songs that I play, but I almost feel like they're mine now. I've played them for so long.
Wow. So when you write music, do you do everything, lyrics as well as the composition, or does someone else do lyrics?
Well, I've always done both, usually, because I sit around my office or my music room, and that's where I write. I play guitar good enough to play out.
Okay.
I'm not a gifted guitar player, and I never will be. There are so many people that can be a great guitar player. I'm lucky to know those guys.
Wow.
But yes, I do. I generally write to a lyric. I do not write to a melody. I usually have a hook.
Really? Okay, so the lyric comes first.
Start with a hook,
right,
and then I'll sit and come up with some melody. After 50 years, it's hard to find new melodies. And therefore, recently I've been doing more collaborations, and I've really enjoyed it. It's opened up a new avenue of songwriting, to have someone else that can bring a melody into it. And I'm working very closely with a friend that I've known for a long time in New Braunfels right now, Kevin Lee, and he's sending me melodies that he records, and then we're working on lyrics in Huntsville, and then we go back and forth between them. So collaboration is something new, and I'm really enjoying it.
So do you have a fan base of people, they know your songs? I want to hear this song or something?
Don't do that to me.
I don't know if it's a good or bad thing.
A fan base. I could be so lucky. We're musicians, I've been blessed. I've had a few songs that I think have held up If you write enough of them, there's
Right.
going to be a few that people talk about. Some of them you may not even be proud of. I have a collaboration on YouTube. I guess I should say this on camera, but maybe not. But
What are you talking about?
the name of the song is "Daddy Drove a Poop Truck." Now, as my friend Ray Wiley Hubbard said once, if you're going to write them, you better be ready to play them for the next 50 years, as he did with Redneck Mother. But
Yes.
Daddy Drove a Poop Truck has over 10,000 hits
Wow.
on YouTube.
So do you think it's just because of the title that kind of draws them in, and then they hear it, and then it's
You
all
know,
right? Yeah.
You know, junior high boys and
Whatever. But it is amazing how much difference a title makes to
It does.
anything, whether
It
it's a
does.
show, a song, or whatever.
Yeah.
It draws them in.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what keeps them, but it's what draws them
yeah,
in.
that's a co-write with my friend Todd Hoke, who's from Conroe, and he now lives in Asheville, North Carolina. But
Wow.
that song is a good example of if you write it, just be ready, because it's going to be out there for a long time. You know, you write these very serious songs that you're very proud
Right.
of, and then Daddy Drove a Poop Truck gets over 10,000 hits on
Wow.
YouTube. Played it on, at a gig one night, and someone in the audience who I'd never seen before said, "I saw that on YouTube." So it gets out there.
Wow. So let's go back. You get through high school. Did you know what you wanted to do after high school?
No. My parents were, I thought, middle class working family. They were probably lower middle class working family. My dad worked very hard. My mother worked very hard. From a very small town. Neither of them had been to college. My dad's one of the smartest people I ever knew, but he never went to college. And I asked him one time about it, and he said he grew up in the Depression, and he said he had a scholarship to college when he got out of school. And as a youngster, I was somewhat, crass about it and said, "Why didn't you go?" I couldn't believe he didn't go. And he said, "I didn't have any shoes."
Wow.
So that's the kind of family I came from. But he was a genius. He was a very smart man. And but it proved to me that it's not how smart you are. It's about education. He knew a lot of things. But I was always expected to go to college. Didn't really know how we were going to pay for it, but I was going to go to college. So I was from a small town in East Texas, Trinity. And Sam Houston was the closest university, so that's where I went to school because it would be close to home. I could stay at home for 1 year before I went away to college. And I was from that small town, and I couldn't wait to get away. That was that.
Yes.
I always tell the story when we were in high school. Yes, did I have aspirations? No. Our idea was we were all going to move to California and be surfers. It was the 60s. And how did that work out?
Well, did you get to do it?
I've been to California, but the water's way too cold to surf.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See, if you think of Gulf water, then you go out to the Atlantic or Pacific. Whoa, it's a
No,
big,
we grew up.
difference.
We grew up surfing in Freeport and Galveston in the '60s, and when I went to California, the water's way too cold to surf out there. I don't know why anyone would even think about doing it.
So what did Sam Houston, that experience, teach you?
Everything. I was totally on my own. I wasn't one of those kids that went home every weekend. Right. When I moved to college, I was pretty much on my own.
Right.
My parents helped me the best they could, but like I say, they were a hard-working family, and they did what they could do. I found a passion in science.
Really?
Which is unusual sometimes for people who are in the arts, and it's been a curse at times because you're thinking with your right brain and your left brain at the same time, and you run across a few people like that, and we all have that same discussion, the tension that's there. But yeah, I found science. The very first Earth Day was while I was in school, and I still remember going to that first Earth Day presentation and how it affected me. And I'd always been my dad was a hunter, and I'd always been outdoorsman.
Sure. Yeah.
So those things interested me. So I got involved in environmental science. I ended up getting a degree in environmental science and chemistry.
Really? Wow.
But when I graduated, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. I was having job offers that just didn't make any sense to me. I didn't want to work in a lab. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do that. So after a semester of laying out and working, I decided I'd go back to school. So I went back and applied to get to the MBA program. And I walked in the dean's office, and he looked at my transcript, and he said, "Son, you don't have a business degree." And I went, "No, I don't want a business degree. I want an MBA." And no one at SAM had ever done that before.
Really?
Yeah, it was early. It was in the early 70s, and people were just starting to get engineering degrees and then go into the MBA programs.
But not from sciences.
Well, yes, from the sciences as well, but it was mostly engineers but there just weren't that many programs that had done that before, and so we had to negotiate. And I got my MBA from Sam Houston at marketing management. None
of which has to do with music so far.
None of it. None of it. That's this left brain, right brain thing going on. I was continuing to. I had found friends in college that were interested in music, and wasn't playing in bands or anything, but we would hang out and write a little bit. I'd gotten away from writing music at that time. Didn't write at least to the number of songs that I write now, for sure. So
do you ever get to use any of these degrees?
When I got a job, I had a friend in college. His dad was in the oil industry, oil business, and he was actually an oil broker. And this was 73 was the first oil shortage, and I think that's what got him into it. And he had always bragged that he'd been a millionaire 6 times. And he was a gambler, and he always told me, I said, when you get out of school, I'll get you a job. And I went, that's okay, I'll find me a job. Well, I looked and looked, and I had job offers, but it was either to move to Los Angeles or move to Chicago. And Houston, Texas was the hottest thing going at that time. I said, I'm not leaving Houston. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to leave Houston. And I was down to $20 that I had borrowed from my grandmother. And I walked in his office, and my friend, his son, they were sitting there, and they weren't working. They were playing cards. But I knew that he was making money. And he said, you don't want me to get you a job? I said, Rip, I need a job. And he picks up the phone, and he calls a friend of his, and he said, hey, are you still looking for that chemist? I'm thinking to myself, chemist? And evidently on the other end of the line, they said yes. And he said, oh, I have someone that can do it for you. I'll send him over if I can. And he hung up the phone. I said, Rip, I'm not a chemist. I have a chemistry degree, but there's a lot of difference between having a chemistry degree and being a chemist. But that got my foot in the door with a small company that did. It was a 3-person office. I was so lucky to get involved in it. Taught me so many different things. They didn't do any one thing. So I learned a lot about everything. And
whatever makes money.
And they sent me everywhere. I traveled all the time. I kept a suitcase in my car all the time because I didn't know when I would have to leave from work to go to wherever they said I needed to be there in the morning. And as a young man, it was a good experience, a great learning experience. And from that, I learned that I didn't want to do any one thing. And that's always been
too boring.
Too boring. That's always been my drive, is that if I can have 2 or 3 things going at one time, or more even, and that's what I like to do.
That's true for the really sharp people. You know, the one thing, it's just too boring.
I don't know about the sharp part. That's not. That could be argued, Stephen. I would argue that right now with the play going on.
About that, I think we have a lot of friends that, man, that's their dream. They want to write a Broadway play or whatever, and they never do it. But then there are a lot of people that are really passionate about writing, and they don't write so much for others, but for themselves. And maybe they publish a book. Sometimes they do publish a book. Now it's easier, right? You go on Amazon, publish a book, no big deal. It's a lot easier than it used to be.
Well, it's like being a musician. Everyone has a CD now. Right. At one time, if you had a CD, you were
that was a big deal, right?
You were someone.
Right.
Well, no, I'm living proof. I have several. I'll give you one when we finish. They're free. There's one thing. I do not sell music.
Really?
No.
Why not?
I learned a long time ago that, and I've had some friends upset about it.
That you won't sell.
Well, there's no reason to.
Right.
There's a lot of ways to lose money, and music is one of the really good ways. You pile, they say $5,000 worth of equipment,
right,
and drive into a $500 car and drive 500 miles for a $50 gig.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
I guess it's always been that way for the arts, isn't it? I mean, we're not talking about now. I mean, it's been for hundreds of years.
There's a certain level of people that get there,
right?
But there's this mass number of people below them, and then there's a mass number of people like me below them,
right? That
if you go into it for money,
right,
you're doing it for all the wrong reason. So I came to the conclusion that the way to get rich playing money was to do it for benefits. Had this underground thing going on up in Huntsville, started back in about 98, 99, 97, I can't remember. And it was called the Mix Review, and it was a sort of an underground festival that word of mouth thing, and it would grow and grow, and we would be the last group to play it at the end of the night, but we weren't a band. We always told people, no, we're not a band.
No.
But people would wait to hear us play, and it was fun. We had a blast, but more and more people started coming. Mm-hmm. And we realized we had a method there that we could actually raise some money.
Right.
And I'm so proud of that experience, because I told people, if you want to get rich, play benefits. And we quit counting at something over $500,000. Now, we didn't do anything. Right. There's a lot of people out there that worked really hard on benefits, and we would show up, stand up there, have a lot of fun, and go home. But the benefits raised a lot of money.
Wow.
And you couldn't make $500,000 in the music business in 3 lifetimes, or more.
Wow.
So and then as far as CDs go, they don't cost very much to make. Anybody who wants one, put $10 in the bucket and give the money to a children's charity at Christmas. It's just a lot more gratifying.
It's kind of interesting, all, that the lifeblood of the United States are nonprofits, and that, okay, maybe you can't make money doing, it's not just music, but a lot of things, the arts is fun, and yet the gift of giving is worth way more, at least personally, than the money that you might get. In fact, once you get paid for it, it almost ruins it. It depends. That's not true of all professions, but sometimes
it becomes a job.
Yes,
it becomes a job, and you can still use your job to do good,
right?
But it may remove some of the joy out of it, and it may even show up in your performance.
Yes,
especially as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've been blessed to have taken a path that let me do those things.
Wow.
I feel like it's been a gift.
That's incredible. We got to talk a little bit about Dust Bowl Motel.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
It started with music. I've really never gone back and looked at all the songs as far as dates go, but they're going to go back 10 years, I would guess. That this theme kept rising up through my songs. Every once in a while it would bubble up, something about California.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of had this idea that maybe there isn't a California. And my wife and I were driving around a neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. I was looking for this place I was supposed to play that evening. Mm-hmm. So we got there early, and I was driving through this neighborhood looking for it, and we passed a little house, and there was a garage sale going on. There were these 2 young ladies out in the yard, and this yard was covered with evidently everything they owned, included their toothbrush. Must have been out in this yard. And they had a big sheet hung up, and it said, "Selling our stuff, moving to California." And that started a new song that I'm going to sell my stuff and move to California. And I'm not for sure stuff was the word I used in the lyric. But, so there were several of these songs. And then I had written a song called "No California," which was a lot deeper and heavier about the idea that people think they're going to find something when they get there. Mm-hmm. And it's usually not what they think. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it came from, but I can remember sitting on my back porch, and probably within 30 minutes, I wrote a narrative that started with, "She always said she was going to go to California. She said she was going to go to California. You'd never see her again." And it went from there, and that was a narrative that I wrote about a young lady, Katie Jo Dawkins, and for some reason she was in Oklahoma. I don't even know why, and she was going to go to California to find a better life. And she was living in a rundown old motel, so I called it the Dust Bowl Motel.
Right.
And that's where the story started. I was listening to the radio soon after that, maybe a week later. So many coincidences. And I was listening to KPFT in Houston, and Larry Winters played a song called "Conversation About a Friend," which that lyric never appears in the song. But the song, I thought, was entitled "Katie's Gone to California." Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe it. I said, "Wait, I just wrote this a week ago, and she always said she was going to go to California."
Right.
She said she was going to go to California. Right. You'd never see her again. Mm-hmm. And then this song plays on the radio, and it's a haunting song. But he didn't backsell it, so I didn't know who sang it. Right. And the lyric was not the title of the song. So it took me a while to figure out what the song was. I finally found the song, and it was called "A Conversation About a Friend," and it was by Caitlin Carey and Thad Cockrell, who I thought I had heard the name Caitlin Carey before, but I wasn't for sure. Well, doing some research, it turned out Caitlin Carey was one of the originating members of Whiskey Town with Ryan Adams, the famous songwriter now. And they were the constant part of Whiskey Town for the whole time it existed. I couldn't find anyone who knew her.
Right.
Because I knew I had to have this song.
Right.
So finally I said, put your big girl britches on and call her. And so I did. Mm-hmm. And she's the nicest person in the world. Wow. The most approachable. I mean, here's someone who's been famous since the 90s. And she was just so approachable. She was living in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And she's agreed to let me use the song in any way I needed to, as long as it was for a benefit. Right. We couldn't make money off of it, but as long as we were using it for something like that, she was all for it.
Wow.
So the song, so what I did, I recorded that. Mm-hmm. I recorded the narrative, and I put the song in it. It was about a 17-minute narrative. Mm-hmm. I had no clue what it was. No clue what it was going to be. I just knew it was interesting. And I thought it was good. And I gave it to all my friends, and they wanted to know, what is this? And it's chapter 1. Right. And I thought it was going to be maybe a NPR piece, something. That's what it sounds like. Right. I was in Colorado, in Westcliff, Colorado, backpacking, climbing mountains, and sitting in a small cafe in Westcliff one morning, eating breakfast in an outdoor cafe, and saw some guys that we had seen on the mountain the day before, and we started talking, and there was an older gentleman, very distinguished looking, with his wife sitting near us, and he started talking to us in the conversation, and I asked him why he was there, and he said, "Well, I have a play being produced here in Westcliff, and we saw it on the billboard. Yeah, we're thinking about maybe going tonight." And we just kept talking, and I don't know. He asked me about myself, and I told him something about being a songwriter. And then I said, "Well, I've written this thing that perhaps could be a play, but I'm not for sure." And he said, "Well, send it." He's from California, and Jim Roth, from San Clemente. And he said, send it to me, and maybe let's look at it. So I sent it to him, thinking, yeah, right, I'll hear back from him. Well, 2 weeks later, he called me and said, hey, would you like to write this play together? And that's when it started. And almost 3 years to the day from the time I met Jim is when we debuted the play at the J. Philip Gibbs Center in Huntsville. To a very successful debut. So it was another coincidental meeting of someone that I would have never met.
Right.
And if he had not started talking to me, I would have never started talking, I wouldn't have approached him because I didn't know who he was. So another one of those lucky things that happens to a guy like me, I guess.
There's a lot of serendipity in life that has these incredible impacts in your life. I see that too in my own life, and it's amazing. Like, just for that little moment, if that happened, it would be completely different.
I thought about going back and trying to develop a life map.
Yes.
And there's all these forks in the road. If you had taken that fork, maybe something would be different. Of course, my friend David Zeller and I have this philosophy that no matter which fork you would have taken, you still end up to where you are.
Interesting.
Yeah. You're going to end up, I'm going to end up sitting in this chair talking to you today, no matter if in 1973 I had actually gone to Alaska to work on the pipeline instead of taking that job that we spoke about earlier. I still would have been here. It's complicated.
And that's an interesting philosophy. So all these years, it looks like we've skipped a whole swath of years. Do you enjoy traveling?
Yeah, very much so. I've been blessed to have friends all over the world. I love traveling in the United States as well. For years, we've traveled all over the United States. I've seen amazing things, just amazing things. But a few years ago, I had the opportunity to do things in India. So I started traveling to India. That really opened up something that who would have thought a kid from Trinity, Texas would end up doing the things I was doing in India. My wife and I, we've traveled all over Europe. It's wonderful to get out and see the world.
What is it about travel? Is it something that inspires you? You just want to see different, or is it interesting to see how people are the same but do things a little differently? What is it about travel that you like?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's the feeling of the unknown, especially in places like India where it's so foreign.
Yes.
The culture is so different from ours that you feel like you're on the edge a little bit all the time. Now, you don't feel that way so much in Europe. That's not the same reason.
No.
I think in Europe it's different. That travel's different. People say, was it fun going to India? And I go, maybe not fun. It's very hard. Everything you do there is hard. If you get up in the morning and do anything, it's going to be hard all day. But it's interesting. It's the interest, not the fun.
It's not necessarily comfort.
No,
it's not a comfort because it's all new. Yeah.
Well, it's like going on a backpacking trip in the mountains. You can't ever say that's easy. And do you call it fun? Well, it's fun because it's interesting,
right? Not
because it's exhilarating,
right?
But it's very hard.
Yes.
So fun is a term that's a little hard to describe, I guess, like that.
Where would you like to go that you haven't been yet?
I missed a chance to go to Antarctica.
Really? Antarctica? Wow.
When I was in school, one of those other things, I still don't even know how it happened. I don't even remember how it happened. Somehow I ended up on a research vessel for A&M in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
And it was a 2-week research on microbes, in situ microbes to eat oil spills.
Right.
I don't know how I got on it. I don't even remember. But anyway, I was on that research vessel, and Dr. El Sayed was putting together a team to go to Antarctica.
Right.
And he asked me to be on the team. to go to Antarctica, and I was about to graduate, and I was so broke. It was just, I didn't have any money, and I thought that I had to go to work. That was my goal. I wanted to get a job and go to work, so I passed it up. And to this day, I look back at and I tell young people all the time, look, you don't have any money,
right,
but you have time.
Right. Use
it wisely.
Yes.
So I haven't been to Antarctica, and that would be one of the places I would love to go. Chile. I think Chile would be very interesting to go to Patagonia. I've never been to Alaska.
Oh, gotta make it to Alaska, yes.
I was on my way when I got the job when I had $20 that I had borrowed from my grandmother. If I had not gotten a job by Monday, I was going to Alaska to work on the pipeline.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's one of those forks in the road. So, I've gone almost anywhere I want to go.
Right.
I haven't been traveling as much the last couple of years. My wife still wants to travel more.
Really? She likes travel?
She loves it. She loves it. And I've been so busy with projects that I've neglected that a little bit. I think after this production of Dust Bowl Motel, I'm going to slow down a little bit and enjoy what we do here.
Right.
And then do a little bit more things with her, traveling, things like that.
So when you look back at your life, what were some of the defining events or moments? And you go like, just, oh, wow, I can't believe that happened, that allowed me this opportunity or not.
It's funny. That's a great question. There's some really small things.
Yeah, usually they're small. That's the thing.
When I was in, get this right, when I was in the 8th grade and going into high school, I'd always been an athlete.
Okay.
I loved every sport. Played football.
Right.
I would have loved to play baseball. My dad wanted me to be able to play baseball, but I just couldn't see good enough to play baseball. It just one of those things I couldn't see the ball good enough. But when I was going into high school, I'd kind of come to this conclusion that I was too small to play football. And I had this. He was a science teacher he wasn't a coach, but he was an athlete. He had been an athlete himself. He looked at me and he said, "What are you saying? You're not going to play?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure I should." And he convinced me that you can do anything you want. And of course, when I went to high school, I should have been playing football because I think I was okay at it. And you didn't have to be big; you just had to be fast.
That helps. Fast is good.
That helped, but that changed things.
Yes.
I think about that because if I had not, sports I think are so important to kids growing up. I had a daughter, and she wanted to play every sport.
Right.
But I tried to say you got to focus. But it's not the sport itself.
No.
I'm not going to be a professional football player. She wasn't going to be a professional gymnast or a professional volleyball player. But she started gymnastics when she was a little kid. She learned to stand in line, take instruction, and win graciously and lose graciously.
There's a discipline. There's all these life lessons that have nothing to do with the sport per se.
It's not the sport.
Right.
It's the things you learn from the sport.
Right.
And the things I learned from sports were invaluable. I've still live with them today. It's discipline. You know. No, Scott, I know you love that whole chocolate cake, but don't eat the whole thing. Go run. So that was one. Of course, my parents insisting I go to college. That's something important that changed my life. I've been the luckiest guy on the face of the earth. The little things that have presented themselves to me, and I go, why me? Why was I sitting in that cafe in West Cliff, Colorado that morning when Jim Roth was sitting there? Because I wasn't going to write a play.
Right.
First of all, that's not what I did.
Right.
I could write the narrative. My writing process is so different from that. Jim took what I had, and he started the dialogue. He writes dialogue very well, and it just comes to him. I'm a better editor. I'm a better rewrite of that dialogue. I'm better at, when I see the dialogue on the page, then hearing that dialogue and understanding that, well, maybe that's not really what someone would say, and that's how I write.
Right.
So we've been a good team. I was very fortunate to find someone like that to allow me to have something brand new in my life, theater. It also opened up something else for me, because the songs that I write, I never really knew where they fit. They're not barroom songs.
Okay.
They're not dance songs. You can play them at a house concert,
sure,
where people listen. They're lyrics. And by having a venue like this,
like at the Crighton, sure,
that's where I found out that's where my songs belong, is in some type of production like this. And let the songs be tell part of the story. In Dust Bowl Motel, the songs, we're not a musical.
Right.
Sometimes people see a lot of talk about the music that's in the play.
Right.
We're not a musical. The songs are totally outside of the play.
But they still help propel the play.
But they're
part of the play.
They're part of the play, but they're outside that wall.
Right.
I'm speaking directly to the audience as the narrator, and the songs are part of the narration. Is really what it is.
That's interesting. Yes.
The songs become part of my explanation, a way to move that story along, and to give the backstory of who Katie was, and who the other characters were that were influenced in her life.
Who inspires you? Whether it's musician, actors, artists?
Songwriters. Couldn't be anyone more influential than Guy Clark. Lyricists are who moved me. I want to hear the story of a song, and Guy Clark is probably the best at that. He can say more with fewer words than anyone. It's one thing that always frustrated me. I always felt like I wanted to write a novel, and I go, why can I write a complete novel in a song?
Right.
In 3 verses, 2 choruses, and a bridge, and tell the whole thing. But when I sit down to make a novel out of it,
right,
it doesn't sound like, it doesn't sound real. Where I think the song, maybe the song is where I should stay, because I can do that.
Right.
The brevity of a song forces you to look at every single word, because every word's important. And that's one thing I've enjoyed about Dust Bowl Motel. I've had so much support from some incredible professionals. Maureen McIntyre, who's directed 90-something, 92 or 94 plays in her career, was scheduled to be our director for Dust Bowl Motel, and due to some family health issues, she had to say that she couldn't do it, and Melissa Miller has taken on that role, who's one of her proteges, but Miss McIntyre is still very much involved as a creative consultant. But last summer, after Sam Houston used Dust Bowl Motel as their summer rep program, after we did a rewrite there, then Maureen sat with me for about 3 weeks, and we parsed every single word in the play. She wanted to know why every word was there, and it was an eye-opening experience to get that from a true professional, and I think it made the play so much better. Just the change of one word makes a lot of difference.
It can, absolutely.
Because I realized, and I knew it already, but I realized that there were things in the play that only Jim and I know.
Right.
The audience doesn't know that. Well, if we use the wrong word, suddenly they're thinking something different. And we really are trying to steer them in a certain direction as this play progresses, because there's this play takes a lot of turns. It's not a straight line. It's a crooked line to get to the end. I don't want to say it's confusing, but it's not exactly what the audience thinks it's going to be as we go down the path from the beginning to the end of this play. And I think that's what makes the play very interesting.
No, like I said, it makes it interesting, but most of life is that way, right?
Life
is not a straight line either.
Oh, no, it's not. As we've talked about the last few minutes here, it's not a straight line. But using professionals like that to look at the play has been a great experience, and it's much like the songwriting experience where you have to look at every single word, because, like I say, a song's written on one page, and if you're going to tell a full story of someone's life in that one page, you better be sure which words you use.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah, I hadn't thought about this before, but when you talk about the song and telling the story and getting the narrative, it's a little bit like, well, if you back to the sports metaphor, a sprint versus a marathon, right? There's a rhythm to both, right? Whether you're writing the novel, the play, or the song, but it's a very different rhythm, different energy. You kind of have to, how do you play that? And it doesn't mean that because you're good at one media, you're not good necessarily at the other form or art form. Yes,
it doesn't translate.
No,
I've found that out, and it's always been frustrating to me. The play, the theater format seems to fit what I do much better. I think you hit exactly what I'm thinking about. It's the rhythm of it.
Right.
It's that space between the lines, and that's what a song is. I can tell you something in a line, and then you get a vision, a visual effect, and I can move on to the next thing. I let you use that as the transition to the next. If we're going to write a novel, I have to pretty much fill in all the lines. And then you fill in even more from there, detail from there. You know what that person looks like. You know what that person looks like to you. But in the theater, the actors do that for me. They are blessed with that gift to be able to take that word and put the right inflection on it to let the audience know where we're going or what that means. Are we happy? Are we sad?
Right.
So the theater fits my writing better. I've learned it more closely resembles songwriting.
So when this is done, do you want to do more?
Yeah, well, yes, but I'm not sure if I will. I don't think Dust Bowl Motel's finished. I hope.
Right.
I think after this production, Dust Bowl Motel will be to the point that it's ready for other people to take and put their spin on it. It's such a long process. You do this all the time. I do this one play, and I've been working full time on it since June.
Wow.
And in the last 2 months, I've been working more than full time on it. But I'm glad we're doing it. We're benefiting the Crighton Theater for letting us use this beautiful space, and hopefully we keep these spaces alive in downtown America. This is a beautiful theater, and we're so blessed to have it here in our community. Sam Houston scholarships are a little part of it because they've been so instrumental in getting this play off the ground from the very first reading that we did and recorded it back when Jim and I were still writing. There have been so many rewrites from that. Miss McIntyre put together a team of students who read the entire play for us, and we recorded it so we would be able to hear the words. And then they used it for summer rep. And then Miss McIntyre and I have parsed every single word in it. So, and then they're lending their tremendously gifted technical team to the show that we'll be doing here in Crighton. Without them, the show would be very difficult to do. In fact, they're lending equipment that we would have no access to, such as projectors. That it's going to be a little bit different show. We're not building a big set,
right?
Because we have such a fast turnaround to move into the theater. We'll be using video sets, but it's something that they do all the time. They're very proficient at it. They have software, they have hardware that none of us have access to. So, and then just their technical skills of doing it all. The people that they have that will be on our team. So
excellent.
Then on top of the scholarships, I realized when we were doing it in such a big venue, when we were brought to the Crighton, we needed a bigger cause, and that's when I chose Make-A-Wish to be our big beneficiary, and went down, made our presentation to the Make-A-Wish Texas Gulf Coast, Louisiana chapter in Houston. And they were very enthused to join us as a team member, and I've been very happy to have them on board. So we have Make-A-Wish, and we'll be granting it at least one wish to some deserving family for a child with a life-threatening disease, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the workshop process, because I mean, you've been working on the play for some time. It's obviously evolved over time. But like I said, a lot of the younger playwrights, writers, they don't get that. They just say, "Oh, well, I write it, and then it goes to Broadway." And you're like, "No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way."
We could all be that lucky. I'm a lucky guy, but I'm not that lucky.
But there's a lot to be learned in that workshop process. You know, like I said, you talked about already, some of the feedback from the different professionals that you've engaged and some of that. But even the audience must have their own impressions that give you ideas of, okay, yeah, maybe this needs to be. What were some things? Have you gotten anything from audience reactions that way?
Well, every audience is different.
Yes.
I do know that. They do not laugh when you expect them to laugh, and sometimes they laugh in places that I didn't think they were going to laugh.
Right.
They're very perceptive, I think, in general. They do catch on very quickly to where you're going, so you don't want to telegraph it sometimes. Right. You want to make it a little bit difficult for them.
Sure.
And I know my favorite plays are when I go home and an hour later or the next day is when I go, "Oh, that's what they meant." That's my favorite. That's my favorite type of play.
Wow.
Where I don't go home knowing for sure what something meant, even if it's a small part of the set,
right, that
they were trying to tell me something with. And that's what I hope to do with this. The workshop process has been wonderful. We're so new, at least when we first produced it, that was 2 years ago. We've grown so much since then. I used the actors. This play is set in the panhandle of Oklahoma, rural Oklahoma, very rural Oklahoma. We don't describe a town, but it's just on Highway 64, way off in nowhere, western Oklahoma is the way it's described. So it's written in the vernacular, and I rely on the actors a lot for that. When they come up with a new term, in rehearsals, I'm constantly making notes, and I go back and I parse those notes at the end of the production for a post-production rewrite. That's what I did in the debut. I think I learned a lot from them as far as delivery. If something was maybe one or two words too long, or they needed just a little more explanation for some parts of the play. The workshopping has been real important. I learned so much from the summer rep program, because they worked every single scene, and these were kids that had never seen it before.
Right.
And after each time they would do the first read of a scene, they would stop and discuss it.
Right.
and they would give me very strong and honest input or feedback as to what they felt about that character at that point. So the character development that came from those workshops were something that was invaluable, because I had 20 or 30 people giving me feedback on any one character. Not so much a line or you know, but it was their general impression about from what the character had said. And that gave me almost a focus group to let me know, okay, am I presenting that character to the audience in a way that I want them to perceive that character, at least at different segments of the show. So the workshop process has been, maybe it's because I am older, and it goes back to songwriting too, though. When I write a song and someone else is going to perform it, I don't want to influence their creative process as well. They're the vehicle and they have to make that song their own. I don't want to interfere with that.
That's an interesting philosophy. I mean, it's refreshing to hear. A lot of times when you about writers, in the standard beginning of the script, okay, first of all, there's no changing of the words. Okay, that part I get. But a lot of times, if you look in scripts, there's so much parenthetical stuff that the author has put in. It almost seems like it's stifling the actor. They're not allowed to put their stamp on it. But you don't have a problem with that.
Not at all. Not at all. That's been part of the rewrites have been not necessarily on dialogue, but on that inclusion of direction.
Yes.
Trying to remove as much of it as we can. To have the right amount remaining to be sure the script goes in the direction we want it to go.
Without being stifling.
Without being stifling. Because probably when we started, we were at that point. But we've pared it down now.
You had a certain vision in your mind. You wanted it a certain way. But now you've given birth to this. And now you said, okay, it can take on a life of its own. And you're okay with that.
I can't wait to see it done 10 different ways. I can't wait. It'll be the most exciting thing other than hearing someone else sing one of my songs.
Wow.
I think that's what you do as a writer. I'm not performing it. I'm going to perform 6 songs in this play. I'm going to perform them the way I want to perform them. And the way I feel them. But when someone else does them, they're going to be different, but they're going to be good. They're going to express what they want to express, and I can't wait to hear that.
That's refreshing. I just saw an interview with Elton John, and after 50 years of songwriting, he still likes writing new songs, and he's so energized by new artists because they give him new ideas, new blood. His only downside is that people want to hear the old songs.
Everybody does,
and they're like, but I want to do different things.
You always want to play the new one. Well, I heard an interview this weekend with Diane Warren, who's one of the most famous songwriters there are. And it was on Sunday morning, and it was with her and Lady Gaga. And she had this, I don't remember the song, but it was a song that she had written, and she had this vision for it. Well, Lady Gaga had a different vision for it. She embraced that vision that Lady Gaga had because she wanted to make it an anthem. And by doing so, that's what made the song famous. She feels that I'm turning this over to you. You have some creative process in it as well. I've done my part. I gave you the words. Now, let's see where we can go with it. And it's an exciting feeling when you hear someone else express your words. The first time I heard it on stage, I had tears in my eyes. It was
the power of theater.
It's powerful. It's powerful. I can't wait to see it here. It's going to be a lot bigger from what we did. The people who saw it in Huntsville, I think they saw a very good production. On a shoestring.
So is that more almost a black box type production? Very minimal set and
it was black box in the sense that I built it all.
That's not what I'm talking about.
But it was black. we did it the simple way. We used flats and we painted them black, and so all the walls were black. So we didn't have to worry about any other painting.
Right.
It was on a smaller stage than the Crighton. The Old Town Theater, J. Philip Gibbs Center, is a somewhat smaller stage than this, much deeper, but not quite as big. So we had to make it fit. No, it was going to be generally the same set we have here, except for the background.
Right.
The background here will be video, much more realistic.
Okay. So what do you do when you're not writing?
I love being a granddad.
Okay. Yes, that takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I love being a dad. Right. My daughter is I love my daughter and grandkids to death. I love being a husband. I live on a ranch, so there's always work to do.
Something to do, yes.
I like training horses.
Really?
Yeah. I always say I've been lucky enough to been married to the same fine woman for over half my life, and had the pleasure of owning several fine horses.
Wow.
So that sums up what makes me happy.
That's a lot of effort. I know that the horse is a lot of effort. Do you do competitions?
At one time, not
That you used to
anymore.
do that?
No, I'm the proud owner of one horse now instead of 6 or 7 horses. But I like having a horse around. Enjoy photography.
Okay. Yes.
I enjoy walking, hiking, running, anything outdoors. I don't like being in the house. I'd a lot rather be outside, even if it's over 100 degrees or below freezing. I don't like being inside.
Wow.
So put me outside any day.
So do you see photography as a creative thing, or is just, no, I'm just taking pictures to remember the moment?
No, I've seen them more and more as creative. Went through a time that I was always taking photographs. This was back in the analog days of film cameras. And I'd get home and it just didn't look like what I saw.
Right.
So I stopped taking photographs when I'd be out backpacking or wherever I was. I went, the photo in my mind is so much better than the photo I can produce.
Right.
But now with digital photography, that's all different. I can go home now and I feel like I have a photograph of what I saw.
Interesting.
It lets everyone be more of a professional photographer because you have access to your own darkroom. If the photo was too bright, well, we can darken it a little bit. Where before we couldn't do that. We were just sending them off and they'd send them back. And that's why they didn't look like what we remembered. So for years and years, I don't even know how many, 10 or more years that I didn't take photographs because so this is where the best photograph is in my mind.
I have to agree that the best photograph still is in the mind.
It is.
Like the whole thing with the travel.
It is.
That experience is so different. And although I take pictures to remember, but I have also seen and heard of the studies where people that take more photographs actually, I won't say enjoy the experiences, but they remember less. As opposed to, so there have been times when I just refuse to turn the camera on.
They're not absorbing it. They're just shooting it.
Yes.
It's a snapshot instead of...
And we all do that now, especially that they have on your phone. You can go anywhere. You see everybody snapping pictures and video, but they're not experiencing the moment in the same way.
The best photograph I have is in my mind, and the reason I have it is I didn't have a camera with me. And at the time, I was so upset that I didn't have the camera with me.
That's true. I'm that way too. I'm upset. I don't have a picture to remember the moment.
But I remember this as if it was happening right now, not yesterday, but happening right now. I was sitting on a side of a mountain, and I was watching it. I went there specifically to this specific spot to watch a sunset in the Rocky Mountains. So I'm looking west, and I'm watching this sunset, and it was spectacular. And I turned around behind me, and the Continental Divide was about, I don't know, 40, 50 miles away behind me, and the mountains were covered in snow, and there was a full moon coming up over the mountains. Now, that's not what I came there to see.
No.
But that full moon over those snowy mountains will always be burned into my memory. In fact, a friend of mine and I, Doug Kopic, from Little Rock, Arkansas, he and I wrote a song called "Turn Around and Look the Other Way," because I was telling him this story about I went there to see the sunset, and I said if I had not turned around, that moonrise was the real experience.
Right.
And he said, let's write that song, and we did. Turn around and look the other way. It's a good lesson for your whole life. Don't just look forward.
Right.
Look around. There's things happening all around you all the time, and they're all interesting. So you may not realize how interesting they are till later on, and maybe there's a connection somewhere that you say, "Wow, that was something I'm glad I got to see."
It's a great life lesson. Too easy to forget.
Well, I hope we remember it.
Hope I remember it too. Well, thanks for being with us. I'm going to ask you the question we ask everyone. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
Well, first of all, I hope just good luck counts for something. That he says, you were the luckiest guy to ever walk the face of the earth, and maybe that was good enough. Come on, because I look at myself every day, and if there's been someone luckier than me, I honestly don't. I'm so grateful for all the blessings that have come my way, and I'm not sure what I did to deserve them. It's something to behold.
It was a gift.
It's a gift.
Good. Scott, thank you so much for being with us.
Stephen, thank you for having me.